Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special In Conversation with Asha Devi event today. My name is Nasser Sherkat. I'm a professor of human-machine interaction and also head of School of Engineering and the Built Environment here at Birmingham City University. It's a real pleasure to welcome you and you to this fantastic event, and we are really looking forward to a very interesting conversation, which I'm sure will be very enlightening for those of us who are interested in engineering and how engineering is a opportunity maker and a life changer. So over the next hour, what we will be doing is to try and explore around how the work of a leading engineer, a structural engineer, as Ashas, and we'll be exploring how the expertise and the experiences have shaped the activities and the events that happened around the event of 20 years ago around the Ground Zero environment, and we'll be looking to see what the take-home messages and lessons learned from that going forward in shaping lives and societies. We'll be asking questions and trying to explore the experiences that Asha has had in her career and how she's got here, and see what great lessons we can be learning. So there's also going to be opportunity for you to ask questions when the right time comes, and there is a live feed. So we'll be picking up the questions that will be coming from you, and I myself will have some questions, looking forward to asking those questions, and as of course the opportunity for you to ask me questions should you wish to. So it's a great pleasure to have you here, Asha. It's really exciting. I'm, as an engineer, really excited to be hosting you here, welcoming you to Birmingham City University. You've brought the sunshine with yourself, so it's great to be having this fantastic background, the background of a lot of cranes and a lot of construction going on, so we are all feeling at home here. So, Asha, you were born local, in Handsworth, Birmingham, and went to Holt School in Losell. So you studied engineering at University of Birmingham here, around the corner, and was awarded honorary doctorate here with us, Birmingham City University, in 2020. So that's great to acknowledge that you're on board with us now, and we're looking forward to your continued support and help in developing our vision. So one of the big events in our lives was a forming and informing opportunity for yourself, and you were effectively playing one of the leading roles in assessing and mapping out the routing for the emergency services around the collapse of the Twin Towers in 2001. And this is a really fantastic opportunity for us to join with you and learn take-home messages, as I mentioned, from you. So your work isn't limited to that. You are you're working with one of the leading engineering consultancy firms in the world, Arab, And you have got, through your company, a global presence in this area with contributions around the globe in Africa, United Nations, and various overseas governments. So that's great to be able to draw on that experience going forward. It's not only global work that you've been doing, you're very much minded to be looking, and you are doing a lot of work locally, so that chimes in really nicely with our mission of the University for Birmingham. So the work that you've been doing in developing the different projects around the city, the Water's Edge, the Birmingham Children's Hospital, the Sea Life Centre, and the various activities that you've been involved with, and with your position at Arup, making a real difference to the world around the Birmingham area, and of course around the globe. So that's fantastic to again learn from that. So it's a real pleasure, as I said, to welcome you here to Birmingham City University. And it would be great to start by asking you some questions, sure, if I may, myself, about those experiences that I talked about. So, looking back at the events around the 9/11, and of course all the difficulties and atrocities that happened there, you were at that point in your career finding yourself in a very unique set of circumstances, and you were finding yourself in a situation where you had to draw on various facets of your knowledge, skills, expertise, and character to make a difference there and then. So the question that is in my mind is, reflecting back at that situation, what is the take-home, the key take-home message that you took away from that when you reflected on that situation and you think back at the situation? What was the key message that you learned, so that you can enlighten us with?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think in order to answer that question, maybe take a sort of a quick run through my career, if you like. I grew up in Birmingham. I studied in Birmingham. I went to university here. My family lives here, so for me this is home. But at the same time, I was fortunate enough to come across who became colleagues in Arup, who gave me an opportunity, and I took it. So in my pre-9/11 years in Arup, I was given an opportunity to work on some amazing design projects, some of the most iconic projects around the globe. I was able to do some overseas assignments. So I was developing my skill set, my experience, my understanding of engineering and the built environment. And then I happened to be in New York working there when 9/11 happened. And I realized very quickly that as those events were unfolding, my skills and experience were useful to the search and rescue. There was a need for certain skills. And there was a number of us engineers, not just myself, there were many from Arup and from many other companies who got together and supported the search and rescue effort. We utilized everything we understood about engineering to try and keep everybody safe and to assist in the rescue operation. Post initial search and rescue, we then worked on the strategy for downtown Manhattan. We looked at how to make improvements and learn from what we had discovered. So as engineers, we were already starting to implement lessons learned. You know, things that we found had collapsed for certain reasons, we then moved on to implement them into the new strategy in a different way. And I suddenly found myself, over the past 20 years in particular, from the search and rescue effort to the strategic development work to all the work and projects I've done since, I look at things differently. So my one take home from there was, I was an engineer before 9/11. I became a designer in the built environment post 9/11. And by that I mean I used my design skills, my engineering skills, my project management skills, my understanding of some of the lessons learned. And by no means do I know everything. However, I was able to ask questions in a different way. And we work in a very collaborative environment in engineering, and therefore it naturally came to me to be more inquisitive and work with people. So the one take home for me was that I changed my perception from just thinking of it as a project with engineering in it to seriously considering how it impacts on society around me, well, how does it benefit the communities, how does this help the built environment in our surroundings.
That's fantastic. The one thing that you mentioned there that is something that I latched onto is how the exposure to those circumstances enabled you to look at things differently. And that's a very, very interesting notion in that you are looking at ways of doing things that are transformative in terms of their nature. So am I right in understanding that seeing and being exposed to those opportunities opened your eyes to the way that things could be transformed in the way that they are used and the way that they are actually being part of the fabric of everything else around it?
I think as engineers, we are always looking at health and safety, we're always looking at creating pleasant environments. You know, we talk about built environment, but that's everything, you know, everything around us. And we want it to be cohesive, we want it to be pleasant, we want people to enjoy the experience. What the events of 9/11, and I think for any engineer who has been involved in any major disasters of any kind around the globe, you suddenly start to think about things differently. You suddenly realize that actually the decisions you're making as designers are going to can have an impact on an environment that suddenly becomes a disaster zone. And therefore my thinking changed. I started to think about the what if scenarios as well. I thought about how do people get out of spaces? I thought about how do people feel safe in spaces? You know, one of the biggest challenges for downtown Manhattan was how high should they replace the towers in the future? Will people occupy them? It's quite an important thing for somebody who has a love affair with tall buildings, who wants to be building taller. Suddenly I have to think about, well, how tall is tall? You know, how tall is acceptable to society? And therefore, suddenly your perspective is much more about thinking about the user experience, thinking about the occupiers. It became more prevalent in my decision making.
That user experience and the point that you made there is something that as an educator in my line of work is very key to communicate with my learners. And it comes over as a challenge which is around the interdisciplinary nature of what engineering is.
Yeah.
So it would have been a really unique and interesting experience in a pressured environment to be working with other people who are from different disciplines and different backgrounds. So if you were to reflect on that, how important is for engineers to be aware of the fact that it is an interdisciplinary profession which has to communicate with professions that are nowhere near with that level of technicality? And how much of a challenge is that, and how do you overcome it?
I think we're quite lucky in engineering, I think, in the built environment. We tend to work with a lot of like-minded people who want to collaborate and work on achieving the same end goal for a project. And therefore, we're probably, you know, one of the most fortunate professions. And you're working with different walks of life, different cultures, different skill sets. You know, we're from Birmingham. That is what Birmingham is. You know, it is that diversity of range of skills, experience, cultures, understanding, and therefore, I think it makes us much rounded as engineers. Working in teams with a variety of experience and skills in there, we still have to support others. You know, I remember working with many people who you know, working in Africa, for example, if I take that for a minute, we have completely different perspectives on engineering. You know, and what we understand in this country about engineering isn't necessarily the right solutions for an NGO in an African country who is trying to achieve more with minimum spend. You know, we don't need to be creating fully air-conditioned environments for them. We need to create them functional hospital spaces which were to service as many patients as possible, as quickly as possible, and as safely as possible. So our perception of what the end user needed had to be adjusted, and we had to work very differently. And that is something, it doesn't, you know, it isn't natural to sort of, you know, you want to go in with what you know, but the important thing is to go in and be open-minded, and therefore working together, finding the right solutions together. It comes with time, it comes with experience, and you're forever learning. I'm still in awe of what I understand, you know, just from a meeting I had yesterday. Therefore, it's a continual learning cycle, and you will never, I don't think we ever fully master it, but what we can do is get better at it.
That's great. Thank you very much for that thorough answer. In the realm of interdisciplinary and tuning into what the users want and have an international perspective of that. One of the things that, again, in engineering and the teaching of engineering, we're trying to convey to our learners, it is all about what is it that they learn now and how that relates to what it is that they wanted to learn about engineering. So what attracted them to engineering, and what is it that they want to achieve? So if you, building on what you were just describing in terms of engineering and the important factors within that, if you were to look back at your 16-year-old self back in time, and if you were to give yourself some messages locked up in a bottle that you would find now, and that would help you with your career going forward, if you were to look back, what would be the key messages that you'd be giving yourself now?
Well, giving myself as a 16-year-old, I think I would say I was a little bit slow to take up on the opportunities when I was 16. You know, working within the confines of the boundaries of the community, the society I lived in. As an Asian female, you know, from a background in inner city Birmingham, were the opportunities there? They didn't fall in my lap. I did have to go out and find them. And I think the key is about grasping those opportunities when they come along. You know, look for them, and if they are there, take them. And realize that sometimes they won't work out, sometimes they'll be wrong, sometimes they'll be brilliant. But you learn from each and every opportunity you take. And if you get a little bit of a knockback, you just have to dust yourself off and carry on. I was lucky, I was very fortunate. I had an opportunity to work with Over Partners very early on, still as a student, because of an opportunistic meeting with somebody who became a very good colleague of mine. And, you know, and I've been at Arup ever since. Now, I still get those opportunities, you know, opportunities to go and work overseas. They became, you know, visible to me, and I took them. I didn't know what I was doing. I never knew the country I was going to, for example, when I first started my assignments overseas. But I realized I was actually prepared for the adventure, and I was willing to have a go. And you know, you stick with them. It's about perseverance. It's about trying and picking yourself up, doing it again. But there have been some great opportunities, and, you know, I've been very fortunate in my career. I have what I call my happiness scale. And if my happiness scale continues to go up and up and up, then I'm happy in the work environment. And actually, I sort of looked at my happiness scale not so long ago, and I've realized 29 years in Arup are as a consequence of some of the landmark, iconic projects I've done in my career, which have made me happy. You know, I've been pleased that I have been able to be involved in them, or I have achieved something, or I've been able to make something better. And therefore, for me, that makes me comfortable in the career environment I'm in. You know, engineers like to be engineers for a long time. And we evolve, and we learn, and we widen our network of understanding. And eventually you get to the point where you can almost, you know, pick and choose some of the projects you want to do. So I'm quite fortunate that I get opportunities to say, can I work with the UN on a particular project? Can I work on carbon reduction in healthcare? Can I go and work with this, you know, NGO? Can I make that work within everything else I'm committed to? we have to make money. You know, that's how businesses survive. But at the same time, we can do a lot more supportive work and also help others to evolve as well. So it isn't just about doing a piece of work to feel good. It's about, as engineers, we can also translate some of our skills to others and developing other skills, whether it be in industry, whether it be at universities or at schools. It's about engagement. You know, we want to engage with students, we want to engage with parents and school children and staff. You know, we want to be able to share how powerful engineering and the built environment is. You know, almost every day our touch points are influenced by engineering, good engineering as well. It's occasional bad, but you know, what we have around us is as a consequence of some of the most brilliant-minded engineers that have ever existed. Whether they be Romans, whether they be, you know, Victorians, whether they be the Industrial Revolutionaries, or whether they be the smart engineers working at computer screens today, creating the most fantastic 3D visualizations that enable us to improve processes, be more efficient. You know, that's good engineering to me.
So if I was to sort of pick up from what you just said, those opportunities that you had and the exposure that you had, and you embraced those opportunities. We know that there is a shortage of engineers, and engineering profession needs a lot more for the foreseeable, and engineers are the ones that are actually building our way towards future, helping us with the challenges, be it the net zero, be it sustainable, be it you know, healthy aging, be it you know, unmanned automatically guided vehicles or whatever that is. How do we actually, and this is a question constantly on my mind as to how do we address this problem of shortage of engineers, is what do you think is the best way of drawing on that exposure? How do we create more exposures? How do we communicate the message of what engineering is? And how do you think we could really get people exposed to those opportunities, and thereby hopefully the sequence of events will take them to places like you are?
It's a very important question, and I think it's everybody who works in engineering's responsibility to help. We do have a shortage of skills. We do need to encourage more diversity, inclusivity in engineering, particularly, you know, women in engineering, and encouraging the BAME communities. And you know, Birmingham is such a great ethnic mix. We really need to be encouraging more in our region. The reality is that we in industry and in academia need to get out there and spread the message more. There needs to be more involvement, more engagement, more encouragement of industry leaders to get out there and spread the message. It's not always easy, and the pandemic has been a challenge for all of us. But there are many things that are being encouraged, and there is many ways for us to touch points with younger people in our society to actually encourage them to think of engineering as a profession. It's a great profession, you know, it's very competitive in terms of salaries, the opportunities are great. It's one of a handful of professions where you get to travel the world and, you know, do some very interesting things. You know, how often do people get to say, I've just met some senior politicians, or I've just attended an event where the royalty or the royal family were attending because we happen to be opening a project that they are patrons of. You know, there are some fantastic opportunities out there in engineering, and that's just not from working with Ovaro. It's across the field, you know, across the engineering arena. We have got huge opportunities, huge expectations from society of what they want. You know, we're doing the Commonwealth Games here in Birmingham. What a great thing for us to be looking forward to next year. The engineers have been beavering away in the background, building some fantastic spaces. Why don't we just, you know, start emphasizing more what we can do? You know, we are looking forward to some fantastic sports events next year. Let's look at how that has been created. What has engineering done to support that? Let's get out into the communities and have those conversations. That's
great. Thank you for that answer. I'm looking to developing the School of Engineering and the Built Environment here at Birmingham City University. And one of my key strategic objectives is around employability and is around future-proofing the careers of my graduates. So I'm trying to maximize the chances of my graduates in the built environment and engineering for employability and also for future-proofing around the fact that the world is becoming more and more digital. So without really getting you to do my homework for me and my job for me, I would really be interested in your views as a leading industrialist who has got the exposure of the local agenda here in Birmingham and the global agenda and the global perspective, having worked at such different fantastic levels. What is your advice for me? What do you think it is that I could do to enhance the employability and future-proofing of my engineers going forward?
Well, first of all, congratulations for your post.
Thank you very much.
Pleased to hear that you're the head of engineering here.
Thank you.
Also pleased to hear that you have well over 2,000 students in the engineering faculty. Great. Let's hear more about that in industry, would be my first suggestion. Get out there and tell us that there's this many students studying here, graduating year on year. Invite us in. That's the other thing I would say. We are constantly looking for digital skills with engineering. We're constantly looking for ways to become more efficient, utilizing digital processes in the way we do things. We've got to move with the times as well in engineering. It's not, gone are the days of the abacus. We have some pretty impressive computers these days, but also we can streamline some of our other processes. So one of the things that we find with a lot of our early careers, new arrivals into the firm is they bring such interesting perspectives on digital, which, I'm a little bit long in the tooth now, so I need to learn, but I also recognize that I probably don't know half as much as our early careers people who are coming in. So teach us as industry through your faculties, give us exposure to your students, recognize who the players are in your region, encourage students, your undergraduates to think about us as employers and invite us in. And it's that level of communication that if we can improve on that, I believe that's building relationships, which is what engineering is about, and it opens up opportunities for careers as well. We want to see more local recruits. We're particularly interested in hiring more in this great city. And as I probably haven't said to you today, but we are relocating to the city centre. We're 2 years away from moving into our new offices that are being built at number 1 Centenary Square. It's the big frame that's coming out as you drive down the tunnels, if you don't know the patch. But, we're really excited about the move back into the city. That's over 900 people moving into the city. We will be one of the largest employers in the area. And it's a big number of engineering staff, academias, who are coming back into Birmingham. We want to do something with that. We want to engage and grow our business. We're busy, we're growing, we're looking to recruit. We've got an awful lot of interesting and vibrant projects going on. As you said, the backdrop to us today is fantastic. There's a lot of cranes, there's a lot of activity out there, and there's more to come in our great city. So let's promote that.
That's great, and I'm really, music to my ears. I'm really delighted that we have got such a well-connected and well-experienced honorary doctorate such as yourself here with us. And it looks like somebody did my homework for me before I joined here, so I don't have to work hard to go and get somebody such as yourself to be joining us. So that's really good news for me, and I'll be looking forward to working with you on that aspect of aspect of exposure, and there are some questions coming up online that we'll pick up soon in terms of the story for Birmingham and where things are at and what we can do. So whilst I'm on the thread of learning a lot from you, asking you a lot of questions to answer my questions, how to create opportunities for my learners and shape futures, help shape futures. Based, again, drawing on your vast experience and exposure, all the way from when you were, developing your career with the exposure to the 9/11 experience and beyond, working with such a wide spectrum of people. What I would like you to comment on is some generic attributes that an engineer should have. Things like communication, things like problem solving. You touched on it, networking. Can you just sort of give us some feel for how important those aspects are from a professional point of view, sitting aside and next to the hard maths, if you like, and the engineering science.
Yeah.
So some exposure to that would be fantastic.
Okay. Actually, we need all of those attributes, but we don't need them all in one person. There are so many different things that are done in engineering. There's so many different aspects to it. If I'm working on a new school project, I will have the best part of 18, 19 different disciplines working on that project, and they all bring different skill sets. You need those people who are very mathematically minded to help us to create algorithms and software, looking at new ways of digitizing approaches to engineering. Some of the early work in Europe, like the crash test dummy work, some of the work we're doing now around 3D simulation modeling, we're even modeling human organs now and human tissue growth by simulating it. We're then able to work with medical research at some of the local universities, sadly not BCU, but we are working with Aston at the moment, and a couple of other universities in the area where they're looking at tissue cell growth. And in order to do that, the engineers did some simulation modeling for them. Now, who'd have thought, that we'd get somebody who is mathematical genius sitting there creating algorithms, creating modeling work for something that could help with maxillofacial work in healthcare. And that kind of a person is probably not me. It's not me. I'm not minded to be sitting there creating these, simulation models, software programming. It's not a skill I'm particularly good at, and I wouldn't even profess to be strong at it. But at the same time, that individual probably doesn't need to be out there, doing some of the networking that you and I are doing today. Those are different skill sets. There are those who collaborate quite strongly. There are those who want to do the design work and just, produce their discipline designs. There are those who want to coordinate and cajole disciplines into delivery. I think there are different aspects of engineering, as there are for architecture and construction, that we all need. There are different ways that an acoustician works to a fire engineer, to a civil engineer, to a project manager. They're all different. How a transport planner works, how a business investment advisor works. They are different attributes in the engineering arena. And I think we shouldn't be worried about whether we feel we fit in. It is recognizing the skills are needed, and you have that skill, and if you have conviction in what your skills are, then don't be afraid to go for the opportunities.
Don't be afraid to go for the opportunities. That is a very important message, I think, that needs to be reiterated over and over again. That's great. Thank you. To me, from my own professional experience and the various activities that I've been involved with, my experience chimes very much with what you were just talking about in terms of the importance of team and teamwork, getting the right team together, knowing what it is like to be a part of a team, and working within the team environment requires some development. It requires some understanding. And here within the school, we're through our curriculum emphasizing the importance of that. It's sometimes difficult to get people and our learners to appreciate how important that is, to do teamwork and be good at teamwork. And whilst we encourage them and ask them to be involved in teamwork activity, and the fact that they're assessed with teamwork activities, most people just don't, like it, don't agree with it. Would you go as far as agreeing with me that I would say it is essential for them to be able to learn to do teamwork, and it's just as important as knowing how to do the design, the calculations, and so forth?
I think engineering is all about collaboration. We have to work in teams and we have to work together to achieve an end goal. The interdependencies are so important that it isn't possible to do this without collaborative approaches. There's even an ISO on collaboration which has been influenced by the engineering world. It's there for a reason, it's there to encourage. I don't think you can force people into teamwork, but you can bring them into a team environment. You can look for opportunities to support them. And as leaders in the industry and as a faculty head, it's important that we encourage teamworking, that we find ways to bring everybody into play. Everybody has a voice in a team, and we should make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to share their thoughts and views in those team environments. It's never easy. I'm normally quite dominating in team meetings, so I do my best to be quiet and let others do their bits. But that's a challenge, and that's a challenge for me, and I have to figure out how to work on that. But at the same time, you also want to sometimes allow teams to, sort of separate and do a little bit of teamwork in there, a little bit of teamwork in there, and then recognize that they come together on projects. And it's finding the right techniques, finding the right ways of doing it, but also recognizing the dependencies you have on each other is how teamwork really happens. And it's that interdependency and making sure that that is understood well. I think teamworking naturally falls out of that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight in emphasizing how important it is to rely on your fellow team members to be able to deliver. So my next question is going to be something as a bit of a help without divulging any commercial sensitivities, of course, is if I was being interviewed by you for a job, how would you test my abilities to be a good team worker? Because you could see what kind of degree I've got. You can ask me engineering questions, maths questions, and all that. How would you go about actually making sure that I'm going to be a good team contributor?
Well, firstly, luckily, I don't have to do that assessment.
What, you're giving me a job, you mean?
Yeah. No. So and this is about working as a team, even in recruitment. We have a very inclusive approach to our recruitment, and many firms do the same thing. So for us, we actually allow some of our junior staff who've been through the early career program to actually get involved in actually some team exercises. So we put them into a team environment and see how they play out. But also we put them in an environment not with someone who might intimidate them as a team leader or a group leader, but also putting them into an environment with people who are much more aligned with the stages of career that they are looking to apply for. And it's, we'll do it at peer-to-peer level as best we can. And actually what you find is people will tell you whether they feel these people interacted in a team environment or not. So you'll put your best foot forward, wouldn't you, if I was interviewing you?
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily pick that up. And that, I think, is the skill, is recognizing, okay, I have a limitation here in what I can achieve here, but I have colleagues and others around me in my team who can actually do this better. And I think that's the key. But at the same time, we're not doing it to catch anyone out. And this is why, one of the things I would say to you is that there is these myths that we have to dispel. It's not about, some stern figure sitting at the other side of a table interviewing you. We want to encourage people to recognize that, it's me. I'm sitting there with a couple of our, junior staff doing interviews of graduates. I'm probably not going to get involved in those interviews because I want them to feel comfortable and relaxed. We're not trying to catch them out. And we need to share that message out with students and others in the community who want to think about engineering. We are a very strong BAME community here in Birmingham in particular. We should be seeing much more interaction with the engineering world. I want to see more in your engineering department. I want to see more applicants from this community. I want to see more women. We've been talking about the number of females in the engineering department now. We all need to work on doing more. And in order to do that, my challenge to you was earlier on, how are you going to get more females into engineering? Well, I'm a female in engineering. I take a leading role in the company I work in the group I work in. Utilize me, to engage and discuss things, but also dispel the myths that this is a hard, fast interview environment. It's not an Alan Sugar type environment. It's not. We are much more relaxed. We're much more comfortable. And the interaction engagement that we can have with engineering departments, and not just from Arup, but from most of the industries like this, we will come in and get to know people. And that relaxed environment starts to encourage others, not just to do an engineering degree, but stay in the profession as well, because that's just as important to encourage.
Okay, that's great. That's fantastic hit, and I think it's a very encouraging thing to hear, and for you to be emphasizing the importance of taking opportunities, and that you've got a supportive, friendly environment where you'll be looking for the best in people. That's very important. Okay.
But we want to challenge you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Challenge you to engage with industry. Draw us in. I think that's the biggest challenge for academia, is draw us in.
Yeah.
Draw us in so we can support, and I think that you'll find that it's an open door.
So that's great. Again, music to my ears. And in our sort of earlier conversation when we were having a chat, I did describe to you my approach in enhancing employability is how closely we work with industry to bring the industry into the classroom as part and parcel of our delivery going forward. Right. So we've come to a point in the chat that we're having where we've got questions coming in from people online. So first of all, thanks very much for taking part, everyone, in this event. So it's great. Lots of comments online and lots of people contributing. So that's great. Can I start by asking some of the questions? So Tamina is asking, so what are the good subjects to study for engineering? And of course, there's been some answers already from colleagues online. I would like to broaden Tamina's question by saying, what kind of attitude and aptitude you should have, or you have, and you know that you're right for engineering?
I think it's a willingness to learn, because I'm still keen to learn and understand. So I'm still learning every day. I think if you've got that willingness to learn and engage and think, outside of the box, those are great attributes to have in engineering. And we're innovators. We create things from an idea. We sometimes create things that have never been done before, and therefore, for that reason, I think being able to be willing to adapt and be flexible and learn is a key attribute.
Very good, thank you. There's a bit of a debate going on online in terms of the importance of gaming, and Minecraft is being talked about.
Right.
Do you have any views about the importance of gaming? Minecraft, it's a building toolkit. I've played a little bit with it myself. to tell the truth. Do you have any views in terms of gaming in the context of engineering, the importance of it? And then any comments that you might have on things like Minecraft? Of course, other equivalents are available in the market.
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on Minecraft.
Okay.
What I will say is that the digital technology behind some of the gaming that's out there is also just as applicable to engineering. And the two go hand in hand. And you know that if you go into the department downstairs, why is digital and engineering together and built environment together in the same faculty? Well, when you look at what they're doing in the cross-fertilization here at the university, you see how they interact, how they are relevant to each of those parts of the faculty. So for me, I understand gaming. I'm not necessarily a big gaming fan, but I just don't find the time to do that. If I remember when I was younger, I used to sit there and play on my Nintendo and the various different games that we used to have. Great. But at the same time, there are technologies that are being applied there which are also being applied into the built environment, into engineering, into many of the products we produce, much of the, you talked about autonomous vehicles earlier on. Some of that technology is actually in there as well. It is all about simulation modeling. That's what gaming is. Please don't say that it's not, but just my perspective, it's about simulating something. And therefore it is just as important. It's the application that's important rather than the understanding. You apply it to engineering, you apply it to a game, yes. And a lot of young people can learn from that. But I would also plead to them to say, the next time there's a design festival in the city and pandemic, pending, hopefully we can do that next year, come and build the bridge in paper, 10 meters long, Send your children over to the design festival, come yourselves as parents, come and see what it's actually like to build something, feel the force of a 10-meter span bridge made out of paper. We had a fantastic time. Come and see what a 3D printed piece of furniture looks like. Come and do some of the practical as well as the gaming experience. And that's what will make you a better engineer, I believe. I love going to site. I love seeing things being built. But without that understanding and appreciation of how things are being built, how can I plan and program projects? How can we get designers and architects, engineers working together and, getting the interdependencies to actually work? It's through understanding the applicability of what we are learning.
Yeah, so you'd be delighted to learn that right now, today, I was up in Millennium Point where our new students are joining as a piece of work that they're doing is that they're making bridges out of pieces of wood, stick, and then they're testing it.
Yeah.
And they're seeing how much load they can load onto it to break it. And then later on, they'll be learning how to generate a computer model and then see how the two are similar, and then use the computer model later on in their learning to extend that loading, extend the span, scale it up, and learn through that exercise. So absolutely, I agree with you in that there's a role for that gaming side of things. But for us as engineers, the hard, tangible material out there is very important.
I think it's everything. I think, we model everything in 3D. We design, we put everything into 3D model, and then that is turned into information that a contractor can build from. So that it has a role to play. It's a very important role to play. And it isn't the replacement, it's part of a process.
Okay, so some more questions in the chat, and there's quite a lot of them coming through, so I hope I'll do them justice in picking up. So there's a question coming in from, I think, MNM. Can a mechanical engineer transfer his skills into other fields of engineering, such as civil engineering? So where do you see that as an opportunity?
We're quite lucky in Arup. We have a lot of different disciplines, and we do move between disciplines. I started life as a structural engineer and now work in project management. I won't profess to being a building engineer or mechanical engineer, but I do understand some of the basic elements of mechanical engineering and can work with my colleagues in an informed manner. I think the institutions, the professional institutions that we have that support mechanical, civil structures, you know, we get our professional membership charterships through those institutions, and there are things that we have to demonstrate that helps us to position ourselves in industry. But cross-fertilization between disciplines happens regularly. I don't think there's any reason why it can't happen. The key is to make sure that, you know, if you decide to flip, you know what you have to do to demonstrate your professional skills and experience.
Absolutely, and I can say from personal experience that if you're a mechanical engineer and you can understand structures and you can understand calculations of stress and strain, you're more than halfway there. The only thing that you're not quite there with is the geology side of things.
The in-depth understanding.
That's right, yeah. Great. I've got another great question here. I hope I've got the pronunciation of the name right. Do forgive me if I don't. It's Karel Venice is asking, what was your experience of struggles being in a male-dominated profession as a woman and a person of color? I'm
glad somebody's asked that question. The answer is that I gave as good as I took. So I think the answer is that I guess a lot of people will say it's not always the same for everybody. For me personally, I was quite comfortable in the environment I worked in. Yes, you get the comments on the colour of your skin, you're a female, you know, how can we trust your ability to do calculations correctly? Those are kinds of things that will happen, but it's how you respond to them that's important. And for me, it was, okay, you said something, if I have to demonstrate that I've done this something correctly, I will. I had a lot of colleagues who supported me when and if something did happen. But at the same time, you know, what do? Do you let yourself get knocked back so much to the point where you think, I just can't do this anymore? Or you say, do you know what? I'll get through this. Somebody said something to me. I'm just going to persevere with what I want to achieve, and hopefully they will be able to see how good I am at what I do. That was my belief, and that's the motto I've worked with all these years. And yes, there wasn't many females in the industry, but I have to say, we still don't have enough in the industry, and that has got to change. And there are many more opportunities now. It's much calmer, if I can say that word. You have other females around you. You have different walks of life. You know, it's much more inclusive. It's much more diverse. So how can we get more women in even now?
Absolutely.
Those barriers have been broken down. You know, a lot of those barriers have been broken down or are reducing day by day. So let's get more females. Let's get more people from the BAME communities in. Let's get a much more diverse portfolio, both in the faculty that you're in and in the company that I'm in. Let's do that. Let's encourage more. Arup has a great record of employing a more inclusive, diverse range of people, but we can always do more. It should come to the point where it just happens automatically. It shouldn't have to be highlighted.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, to a great extent, I think it's fair to say that the statement that you made in terms of a leveler is all about thinking what's the difference and giving as good as you get. That's very important, isn't it? I think that's a very...
But I didn't abuse anybody. I wouldn't give abuse back. I'd just have to say, I can just stand up for myself and say, you want to question my work? Fine, let's get it checked.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say, why are you doing it to me and not him? I just said, fine, let's get it checked. And if there's nothing wrong with it, then we're all happy.
So that's a very interesting thing, and I think something that is worth actually touching on and emphasizing, and that is, to a great extent, would you agree that the nature of the subject and the discipline is a leveler in its own right? It's all about facts, isn't it? Mm. It's all about facts. It's all about proof. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. And as you were saying, if you don't agree with it, you know, here are the calculations, here are the facts. Yeah,
I mean, it is based on, it's about producing information, it's about getting it checked, it's about getting it approved, whether it be done internally in your organization or external bodies checking it. In engineering in particular, we have a lot of what I would sort of safety nets, if you like, for what we do. So if you are not quite getting there with the work you're doing, it'll get picked up very quickly. And actually companies today aren't going to then turn around and say you're absolutely useless, go away. They will help and encourage you to develop certain competencies and support you. The mentoring programs that are out there, you know, Women in Science and Engineering is a great opportunity. We've got West Midlands Women's Group, you've got you know, the institutions, the Connect programs that go on around the city in the Midlands in particular. You know, we have a lot of programs to support, you know, BAME communities, women in engineering. We have International Women's Day. Just look at what school children are producing around their perception of International Women's Day and women in engineering. Excuse me, it's very different to how I think some of us feel in the industry.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that there are, it's very important, and you know, if you're not tuned into it, it's very important to appreciate that there is quite a lot of activities happening around the leveling up of the agenda, about the opportunities of women in the world of, you know, in the professional world, in engineering. We've got great many colleagues, female colleagues in my school who are engineers, who are actively working in the area of women in engineering and science. So it's great to hear you listing those activities, and you are from your industrial perspective engaging with that, and similarly we are doing that. We're getting near the end, and I'd like to bring the near the end part back to Birmingham and back to where we are at. So I've seen a lot of questions here that basically talks about Arab and Arab in Birmingham. But before I ask the general question that's being asked, I need to point out that you are developing quite a fan base out here. So you're getting a lot of messages of support and reassurance, acknowledging how well you've done, and you've really got a good career, and it's a good exemplars of what is achievable. What is it that can be done with a straightforward attitude of being out there, exposing, and having this why not attitude?
Yeah. Well, I'm not done yet.
No, of course not.
Absolutely. I have some life in me yet, as they say.
And we're looking forward to working with you in helping our achievements. So that's a great opportunity, and for me, it all starts here. So thank you very much for that. So back to the question from the chat. Question is all about, so I wonder what the engineering career opportunities in Birmingham are going to be like in the next few years, and where does Arab sit in that backdrop? And you said that they're coming here, there's a presence here. Just paint a landscape, if you would, of where is your outlook with respect to, now that we are sort of emerging out of the pandemic, what's the engineering opportunities going to be like, and where is Arab's role in that for Birmingham? Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience for that question. We're in Solihull, so we're not a million miles away, we're only a few miles away. But we've been there for over 20 years now, and we have felt that we needed to look at it from a business point of view, and coming back into the city made sense. We started out as an office of 150 in Birmingham, some 35 years ago. We're nearly 50 years in the Midlands, so we were 150 people 35 years ago. We moved to Solihull and consolidated a couple of offices to circa 400 people. We had to put our next pavilion on the building fairly quickly. We are, peaking at around 900 people at the moment. We have plans to be 1,000. We are, very active in the recruitment field now. We are working on some pretty high-profile projects. We're looking forward to the Games next year. We're looking forward to all of the big initiatives being planned, the big infrastructure being delivered in the patch. So the answer is that Birmingham is a very positive place to be. We're seeing growth in the city. When you look at London versus Birmingham, there is a lot more investment and growth here. But the investment isn't just inward in the city, it's actually from overseas investors, it's people looking in and wanting to be part of the Birmingham connection. And the links to London and various European cities through the high-speed rail is going to actually offer us some opportunities which we haven't really been able to fully exercise yet.
So I think I take from that there's a lot happening, and we are at the stages of coming out of the pandemic. I know for sure that myself, that a lot of the construction business continued.
Very
throughout.
very busy, and actually a lot of new businesses in engineering consultancy have created bases here in Birmingham. So even pre and during pandemic, we've seen a lot of new engineering faces in the patch, new architectural practices. You know, architect practices in London and overseas are starting to look at Birmingham as a base. We've got some amazing initiatives going on around, you know, the interchange station. We've got UK Central is another opportunity. There are opportunities in the pipeline in this city, which I know the combined authority, the mayor and the councils are very keen on. And those are the kinds of things that should encourage us to look at engineering as professions.
That's great. So great outlook, opportunities. Engineering, we need a lot of engineers. It's a great profession, and within my school, I've got a range of engineering programs, and working with yourself going forward, fantastic opportunity to bring that industrial perspective in, to reinforce the messages of employability. It has been a fantastic pleasure to have this opportunity of exchanging views with you. Looking forward to more of that going forward. And I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking you online, taking part in this discussion. I'm really sorry if I didn't get the chance to pick up your question. We will try and pick those questions up and follow up on anything that we might not have touched on. So, Asha, thank you very much again.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience.
And thanks very much to you all. Thank you.